I'm super excited. I'm not usually this excited for a Wednesday show. Darren outdid himself today. We got two fantastic guests, between them about 20 or so PhDs. I don't know, a lot of PhDs, like a cavalcade of PhDs today on Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Dr. Stacy Trasancos, scientist and theologian, will be our guest, and we haven't had Dr. Stacy Trasancos on for a while, so this is going to be fun. And she's taking kind of an interesting premise. I'm actually interested to hear how she does this. She says science leads to Jesus. So let's see what she can do with that second hour. This hour, if you have a question for a priest, this hour is for you. We're doing Ask a Priest the entire hour. It could be a theological question, but it could be a more pastoral question too. Maybe a situation that you are experiencing, or you got a question about your prayer life, your family life. All those are welcome when we are doing Ask a Priest. And we've got, at least by reputation, I don't actually know this for a fact, but by reputation, a very fine priest to take your questions. 888-318-7884, the number, 888-318-7884. How shall I introduce our guest this hour? Well, how about this? Monsignor John Syak knows more popes than you do. He served as the Vatican for the Congregation of Bishops as the Papal Master of Ceremonies for Pope Benedict XVI and for Pope Francis. He's got doctorates in philosophy and theology. He's the author of several books, including The Catholic Guide to Depression, available from Sophia Institute Press. And he is the pastor now of Christ the King Parish in Milwaukee, Oregon. Thank you very much, Monsignor John Syak, for being with us.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be on the show again.
You definitely know more popes than me.
Well, yeah, that was never thought I would ever be Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, and Pope Francis, but the Lord has His way in life, and it's often surprising. So
yeah,
it's been a joy to know all three.
You're young too, so you could add popes to this repertoire. I mean, we only wish good health for Pope Francis, but nobody lasts forever. You could add more popes to your repertoire.
We'll see. I'm not as young as I perhaps look, but
all right. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Do people ever ask popes for their autograph? Does that happen? Are they like,
usually he's moving so fast that it's not an autograph. It's more of just they just want to touch him. They want to shake his hand. They want to, touch his cassock, do something along those lines.
Because I was thinking about coming out with a line of Pope cards, like baseball player cards, and you'd get all 262 or so popes. But baseball players sign their cards. Most of the popes you couldn't get their signature.
Couldn't do that.
818-2, exactly, literally 2. It's not a maybe, unless you thought we were going to put the
very, very valuable card.
Yeah, right. 888.
And if someone says I have a Pope Callistus,
signed card,
I got that. It's
right. I got his rookie card. No, you don't. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Ask a Priest this hour. Monsignor John Syak here to help you. Lots of folks already on the lines, so we will go to the phones. Let's start with Braden in Georgia, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Braden, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Monsignor John Syak.
Hello, Monsignor. I had a question concerning the validity of my baptism. So I was recently confirmed in the Catholic Church on the Assumption of Mary, but I was baptized in the Baptist Church. And I was on the Catholic Answers website, and I was looking under the Catholic Encyclopedia, and under the section concerning conditional baptism, it said that Baptist baptisms are called into question because there's a slight separation of form and matter, because the form is pronounced before the immersion takes place. So I was wondering whether we have a definitive answer as to whether Baptist baptisms are valid, because this has caused me serious stress because I've already been confirmed. Because when I was baptized, the minister pronounced the form, and then after completing the form, he proceeded to immerse me in the water. So is that definitely a valid baptism, or is there room for doubt?
Well, first of all, good for you for just pursuing your faith. I mean, that's like you've been. I mean, this matters to you. I'm not trained in specialized in sacramental theology, but my understanding is if the using the form and matter, I'm not aware of that distinction in terms of if it's in part of the same movement of things, or if it's the actual pouring of the water while you're pronouncing that. Gosh, I wouldn't. I'm not aware that there's been a definitive answer given on that, but I would imagine that whoever brought you into the church and confirmed you that was already kind of pursued and taken care of in terms of whether if there was a question or not.
So Braden, that's generally the case. They're not going to give you a sacrament unless they're the pastor or whoever arranged that with you is convinced that you already are baptized.
Are Baptist baptisms? Are you aware if Baptist baptisms are accepted as a rule of thumb? Just generally speaking, are they considered valid?
Yeah, in fact, most mainline Protestant churches, Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, would rarely have an issue with the validity of baptism. I think you're in pretty good shape there.
So I suppose a slight separation would be okay. So maybe a second between him saying the form and him immersing me. But him waiting like a day, that would be problematic, right? If he said the form and then the next day he immersed me.
Right, but I would think it. I'm not aware. I'm just kind of as you were talking, trying to think back. I don't think I've ever been privy to a mainline Protestant baptism that had followed the Trinitarian formula and used water, that it was somehow found to be invalid. Although that's kind of a question now. That there's that case in Detroit of that priest who that didn't use the proper formula, of
right.
baptism, and that's been a big kind of kerfuffle in the news and whatnot. But I think in your case, I'd be pretty confident that you're all set.
Thanks, Braden. I hope that does settle your mind. And there are many people who have been unsettled by this, Monsignor. We've gotten a lot of calls about it. People both concerned about two things. One, how do I know that I've been baptized? Two, how do I know that my priest has been baptized? I don't know how. There is a point at which.
The sacramental, we call it the sacramental economy. The way the arrangement of how the sacraments work it matters. It's not like it's just, we just simply wave a magic wand and stuff happens. And so that's why as ministers of the sacrament, we want to be, accurate and careful and do in the heart and mind of the church. It's interesting to see in this particular case, you realize, his marriages would have been fine because in marriage, in our right, the spouses are the ministers of the sacrament. His baptisms were probably valid because he did follow the formula.
Right.
His masses and confessions are another matter. And that's
right.
That's. Yeah, and this is where too. It's like sometimes as a priest, I get frustrated with those who are placed in those positions of authority that think they know better than the church, and that it creates this big mess and hurt, for other people. That I think we need to be sensitive to that.
Monsignor John Sayak is our guest. It's Ask a Priest today, and you're welcome to call and ask your questions of a priest. I have to take a quick break. A quick disclaimer before I read what I'm about to read. I am not reading this ad because Monsignor Sayak is in Portland, Oregon. Can a Catholic be a socialist? Well, I had to make clear that this was not, I wasn't impugning you or your city. That's the name of Trent Horn's book, and it's on sale all this month. You can get your copy for $10 at shop.catholic.com and $5 for an ebook version. Head over right now and get a deal on Can a Catholic Be a Socialist at shop.catholic.com.
We'll be right back with more great answers on Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel.
Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN.
Visit today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, Monsignor John Cyhack, our guest this hour, and he is the pastor of Christ the King Parish outside of Portland, Oregon, in a town called Milwaukee, Oregon, and he is your priest right now. If you have a question that's appropriate for a priest, whatever it is, you're welcome to call. Let's go to Tom in Alabama, also listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. I think the Catholic Answers Live app is getting more popular, Nick. More people calling through the app. Hi, Tom. Got a question for Father?
Yeah. Hello, Father. I just had a bit of a two-part question. I promise I'll be less than 15 seconds in asking it. The two questions were, one was the validity of female altar service, and the second one was, do you think that the subject of the devil, evil, and hell is talked about enough in church these days?
All right, those are pretty divergent two questions. So first of all, should girls be altar servers, or should females be altar servers? Because I suppose women are in some places. And then, do we talk about the devil and hell and evil enough in church?
Yeah. So, taking the first question, so for a number of years, for centuries, that altar serving was done by boys. And there's really basically one reason for that, and that is to cultivate priestly vocations. Right? That's really the intention behind the whole boys serving the altar was so that it would cultivate vocations, get them close to the sacred things, and that was all the way up. I want to say even into the 80s or early 90s, and then the Vatican kind of put out a notice that said basically that it would be up to the pastors, the individual pastors, as to whether they would have altar girls or not. So the church's mind, I would say, is still that basic sense of like, we want to cultivate priestly vocations. Priesthood is the ordained priesthood is for men. And so we want to really make sure that our boys are serving the altar, although it doesn't forbid girls to either. So it really is in the hands of the individual pastors. And so I've known some pastors who, move that right to boys. And usually if a pastor would do that, we would want to do something for the girls as well. And so did a lot of this one particular case I'm thinking of, that the girls had their thing that they did. The boys served the altar, girls did sacristan stuff and set up and vestments and things like that, laying out the vestments for the priest and all of that. And that seemed to work pretty well. It's I think we live in a time where, the kind of being unique boys and girls kind of gets blended in the name of a certain understanding of equality. We always remember we have equality of dignity and complementarity in mission. And sometimes, that having stuff just for the boys or just for the girls can be helpful for their respective groups. So that's kind of a long answer, but the short answer is it's the church's mind and heart is for developing priestly vocations in boys, although the church doesn't forbid it for girls.
And then what about talking about evil at Mass?
Talking about evil, I guess probably depends on what church you walk into. In parishes, I think my parishioners would probably say, we get to hear about that. I think it's an important topic in that we have to understand, because we need to be aware of all of reality and this kind of the stakes we're playing for in terms of our faith and human life as it is. And so sin, evil, hell, the devil, demons, all that kind of stuff, that's all part of reality. corrupted part of reality, and so we should know those realities in terms of what our church teaches about it, as a way of what we want to avoid. Right.
Yeah.
If I can avoid something hurting me, I would want to know what it is that's trying to hurt me so that I could avoid it. And I think again, we're kind of maybe speaking to the context of your question, is that we did go through a few decades of this sense of like that was never talked about, and we don't believe in that stuff anymore, or it's not really relevant, or that sort of thing, and that as we find out, that wasn't a good idea. We need to have that. I think that's probably good on that question. Is that?
I think so. Yes, and I think you're exactly right. We did several decades of experimenting with different ways of presenting the faith, and not all of them worked. It turns out you do need to mention sometimes that there's such a thing as sin, for example.
Right. Yeah. And I think it goes to that beautiful line from the concept from Pope Benedict XVI is like, are we dealing with a hermeneutic of continuity or hermeneutic of rupture and discontinuity?
Yeah. Right.
And when if we are brought into new things from our tradition, not by breaking with our tradition. And I think that's just a good basic concept for us Catholics to keep in mind.
Well, I agree with the second part. I'm going to have to look up the word hermeneutic, but I'll look it up at the break. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the question. I hope those answers were helpful to you. Ask a Priest today, and our guest is Monsignor John Syak from Oregon, where he is the pastor of Christ the King Parish there in Milwaukee, Oregon. You're welcome to call if you have a question that's appropriate for a priest. 888-318-7884. Kim in Illinois, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Kim, your question for Monsignor Syak.
Hi, Father. I'm a teacher, been for some time, and I always like to teach my students how to pray in many different ways, especially like, impromptu type praying as compared to rote, prayers that they say all the time in church or in school. And every time I teach them how to pray, I always use the example of, I'm just going to call Jesus and just talk to him on my way home, and I'm just going to talk to him about whatever's on my mind. And then, I start thinking, well, sometimes I say, when I start my prayer, I'll say, Dear Lord, or God, or Jesus, or Mary. And I feel like I need to address, everyone in the Trinity and Mary. But how do I, for example, for the kids, it's like sometimes when I'm teaching, I'll say Jesus or God or the Holy Spirit. You see what I'm saying? And I think I'm, somewhat confused. Of course, they're going to be confused. What's the easy way around this, Father?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, so we have three divine persons in the Trinity, all of whom are God, sharing one divine nature. And so when I'm addressing a particular person, how does it work out with the other two? Would that be kind of the gist of your question?
Yes, and I realize the Trinity, but like when we start, for example, the question that we had today in religion was, how does God reveal himself to us through Jesus? And so I had to have the kids give examples of that. So once again, they're separating God and Jesus, of course. And so that's where it gets very confusing for the kids when you try to break apart the Trinity and explain one at a time.
Yes, don't break apart the Trinity.
Right. Well, I don't think the Trinity can be broken apart. We might break ourselves up on the Trinity, but we won't break the Trinity up. But getting to your point, what might be helpful is paying attention to the collects, which are the prayers that we use at the Mass. And if you listen to those prayers, they're always structured in a Trinitarian way. So usually the prayer is addressed to the Father, and at the end we say, through your Son Jesus Christ, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. So traditionally in our the way we orient ourselves in prayer, we orient to the Father through the Son in the Spirit. And that can be a helpful way of doing that. Although if you're just praying spontaneously, it's okay to say a prayer to the Holy Spirit or say a prayer to the Son or to the Father. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. But if we're the kids are kind of being confused about, especially about God and Jesus. So we know, although in our liturgical prayer, when we're hearing God, we need to hear Father, right? That's usually God in those prayers is referred to the first person of the Trinity, the Father. But sometimes, especially, we see God and Jesus is like it almost becomes kind of an Arianism, where Jesus really isn't fully God, or vice versa. But so we certainly want to avoid that sort of understanding, but hopefully that's some helpful indications about how to go about praying with your kids.
Thanks, Kim. I hope that was helpful. It's funny because she said, "What's the easy way out of this?" And you just don't get easy with the Trinity. It's hard work. It's hard work to get it right. Let's go to Greg in Boise, Idaho. Listening. Oh, what's up with the Catholic Answers Live app today? So many people on the app. Hey, Greg in Boise, Idaho. Your question for Monsignor John Sayak.
Well, actually, I have two questions. The first one is, since it seems that every other person from Portland is moving here now, I wonder if Monsignor will be moving here also.
Is there a great migration out of Portland over to Idaho?
I have heard such things. I've heard people that said, I've just had enough of the crazy Portland, and so we're going to move to Idaho.
That's funny. Everybody from San Diego is going over to Arizona. They're all getting in cars and going over to Arizona because it's a little wild here, too. So okay. you can't follow the flock though. If the flock goes, you're still you're stable. You got to stay, right? Monsignor in Portland.
Oh yes. Oh absolutely. Yeah. Unless I incarnate over with Bishop Christensen, but no, I'm planning on staying here in Milwaukee.
All right. Second question, Greg.
Okay. Second question deals with a person who was ill for a number of months. And had a heart condition, was in declining health, very elderly, and had a pacemaker. And the person was diagnosed with heart failure, so it had been in decline for a couple of years. But in the last few months, there was a fairly rapid decline in health, and then at one point, the person who had this condition, who needed help to go to the bathroom, anything to eat, and so on, and had difficulty talking, said on a number of occasions, "I don't want to live this way." And so this person asked for the pacemaker to be turned off. So the question is, was that a sinful request, since the person... And by the way, when it was turned off, the person died within the hour.
Okay.
And just for my conscience, because I was there, I would like to know
the ethics. You want to know the ethics of that, whether that was right or wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not trained in moral theology, but I'll take a stab at it. So what we want to, the way to approach it is we talk about ordinary and extraordinary means of care, and of course we're always presuming things like nutrition and hydration. We want to presume this so long as that the burden does not outweigh the benefit of the treatment we presume that we go with that. Certainly with a pacemaker and whatnot, that I think there'd be the argument of like, is that ordinary means? Is that extraordinary means? And I would say, I think it's still that the church would probably say that would be extraordinary means. So in a way, not obligated to have that intervention if the burden is outweighing the benefit of it. The question is that was the pacemaker creating an unnecessary burden on the person, or it sounded to me like maybe there might have been some depression there, and this is what we really want to be careful of with our with those who are terminally ill and maybe on palliative care, is that we're really paying attention to that. If their desire not to live anymore is kind of a depression that needs addressing or not, and some point too. I mean, people. I've dealt with some very sick people, and they get to a point it's like, I just don't want to go on like this. I just don't want to go on from one treatment to the other, and the church does allow to say, I can refuse that treatment. I don't have to have that treatment, that extraordinary means of treatment. That I can let nature take its course. And so I of course I would defer to the more specialized moral theologian, but I would venture to say that the pacemaker is in that category of extraordinary means, and the person doesn't have to have that if they come to the point they don't want that.
Well, let's continue the conversation on the other side. Hang on. We've got to take a quick break. The number 888-318-7884. Our guest is Monsignor John Sayak, and we're talking, any question you've got for a priest. It's Ask a Priest today. 888-318-7884.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Monsignor John Sayak. And it's Ask a Priest. If you have a question for a priest, 888-318-7884 is the number. I left Greg in Boise, Idaho. I asked you to hang on and we would continue to answer. I just had one thing to add. Monsignor, you can add anything you want, but we because we always try to add this here at Catholic Answers at the end of a question that's kind of specific. It has specific parameters that a moral theologian, you might want a moral and bioethical theologian to look at, that we always send people to the National Catholic Bioethics Center. They will answer your question. That's what they do, and they are the best in the world at it. Monsignor and I were just talking about Father Tad Pacholczyk over there, just a great and helpful person, but they're staffed with great and helpful people. And you can get an answer from... Oh, sorry, I'm just going to give the web address.
Go ahead. Yeah.
ncbcenter.org, ncbcenter.org. So they can give you a very specific and more than credible answer, because I'd say even when the Vatican has tough moral questions, they'd probably go to the National Catholic Bioethics Center. So, Monsignor, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I was just going to add, Father Tad Pacholczyk, I went to seminary with him. He is a fantastic priest and very knowledgeable about this. And so, Greg, I would certainly defer to his answer on that. It's a very good question that you're asking.
And I imagine that as the technology advances, I mean, some of these pacemakers are very unobtrusive. So in themselves, they might not even attain the level of extraordinary means anymore.
Exactly. So that's where my uncertainty is the fact is where do we stand right now on the status of these pacemakers?
So, Greg, is that helpful? Will you give the ncbcenter.org a try?
Oh, if you say so.
Oh, you're a difficult sort, Greg. I don't know if we could let Greg back. Okay, thanks, Greg. Let's go to Eric. Eric, right here in Indio, California, watching on YouTube Live. Hi, Eric in Indio. Your question for Monsignor John Sayak. Eric? I've got him up. Nick, no? All right, we're going to come back to you, Eric. Hang on. Don't worry. We'll come back to you. I imagine he's there. Just got sidetracked maybe. Pat in Newark. It says Newark, New York. I'm not familiar with that, but listening on Simple Radio. Pat in Newark, are you there with us?
I am here.
And it's in New York?
I am here. Yes. It's between Rochester and Buffalo.
All right. You realize there's another Newark in the state right next to you, right? That everyone knows about.
Oh, I know.
All right. I just wanted to make sure.
My husband got on a plane once.
I didn't know if you knew.
On a plane once. He thought he was going to Newark, New York, and he was on a plane to Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, as everyone else on a plane is. Go ahead, Pat. Your question for Monsignor.
Yes, they're fairly simple, but kind of technical. I watch TV. I watch the Mass on EWTN a lot, and I've noticed that they incense the altar at the gospel time. They incense at the consecration time. They incense, but I've never linked it to any particular feast. And I wondered what the guidelines. I mean, I have no objection, but I just wondered what the guidelines were on that.
In terms of using incense at Mass.
Right, and I have one other question too, but that's okay.
Everybody's got two questions today. All right.
So regarding the question, go ahead.
The other one is when the altar servers put the wine and the water in the chalice, I noticed the priest always takes the purificator and wipes the inside. And I guess maybe I'm just too technical or something. I wanted to know why.
No, well, one thing is about the sacred liturgy is that it's very precise, and that precision is part of the care that we take in the worship of God. And so, yeah, those movements actually mean something. It often has a practical meaning and often an actual spiritual or theological meaning. So, insofar as using the incense, that there is no rubrics about when it can be used and when it shouldn't be used, sort of thing. So I would imagine that EWTN is that you want to provide kind of a more of the senses, especially if it's on television. So you're not being able to see the incense and the smoke just helps their viewers to participate in the Mass that they're watching. So I would imagine that they may have a more liberal use of incense at Mass. Certainly on high solemnities and things like that, we want to use incense. But the short answer to your question is there's no real regulation on when it can't be used or can. It kind of up to the disposition of the pastor and kind of following the mind and the heart of the church. That's certainly like the high feast that we would use it. With regard to the purificator of wiping the inside of the chalice after the water and the wine, that's actually a good practice from the old Mass, from the Tridentine Rite, Tridentine Mass, that the priest is instructed to wipe the inside of the chalice because when the water's put in there, it could splatter a little bit on the sides of the chalice. And the priest is only drinking out of one specific side, and he only purifies from the one specific side. So in that case, the priest wipes the chalice so that there would be no droplets there that would then be consecrated and then not consumed by the priest. So that's my take on that wiping of the purificator. I actually, even in the current Mass, I do that. I follow that same practice.
Thanks, Pat. I hope that was helpful to you. Let's try Eric in Indio again. We'll see if we can get Eric on the line. And he's only getting one question. I can tell you that right now. Hi, Eric. Are you with us?
Hi.
Hi. You got a question
My question is.
Okay, go ahead.
What does the Catholic Church teaches about money?
Did you hear about Monsignor?
What does the Catholic Church teach about money?
About money, yeah. Are you?
Yeah. Is
there a particular concern
specify
there?
The question.
Yeah. Is there like about whether you can have money or whether you have to give it all away, or what specifically? Is there something else?
Like about donation, like when you are rich, do you give like the church money, like you have to for charity?
Yeah. Okay. So do you have to, if you've got money, do you have to give it to support the church? Can you give it to other charities?
Yeah. So the whole thing of money is kind of like our resources, of our earthly resources that the Lord blesses us with, that we gain from our work and that sort of thing. And we, in everything we want to be like God, and so the Lord Himself, who is so generous in giving us these resources, that we want to be able to give back in imitation of Him, and especially those to the less fortunate. So in the Bible, of course, there is the idea of a tithing of 10% of one's own income that we would give away to the Lord. In terms of the Catholic Church today, it's one of the precepts of the church is the financial sustenance of the church. So that, and the precepts of the church are what kind of qualify us as a practicing Catholic, is that I give money to support the church and those in need. So, but yeah, we do want to be generous with our resources and giving to charities. You don't necessarily have to give to a specific church thing, but we want to give to certainly want to give to the church, give to our parish, give to St. Vincent de Paul and the Missionaries of Charity, and also the Catholic Charities, all those good works that go on.
You want to mention any other possible nonprofits that you could give your money to?
Let's see. Perhaps I don't know, Catholic Answers.
Okay,
maybe?
There you go. I didn't know how far down the list we were going to be, but Eric, was that helpful? Is that what you were looking for?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, God bless you, brother. Thank you very much. I'm glad we got to speak with you. Let's go to Courtney in Cincinnati, Ohio, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Courtney, your question for Monsignor.
Thank you for taking my call. I have a friend who reached out to me today. I've known him for many years, since we were kids. He came into the church as a young adult several years ago. I'm a practicing Catholic, by the way. And since then, he really hasn't, he's told me a number of times he doesn't believe in God. He's married to a woman who practices Catholicism. They've raised her kids. But he's had a really hard time believing. He's had trouble for many years with a fear of death. And he reached out to me today telling me that again. But for the first time that I can remember, asked me how can he begin to have faith in God? And so I wanted to ask what your advice might be for me to help him to begin that path toward having faith. I know, so that's my question.
Okay.
Well, that's a very good question. I'll pray for your friend. And first of all, I would just say, good for you for being a friend. You're still there in his life. And when he is having this spiritual crisis, that he turns to you. And that's the way the Lord works. He works through his members of his body, and to trust, to the graces, asking the Holy Spirit for wisdom, asking the Lord Jesus for His words, to share. But a lot of times, what helps a person come to faith is the relationship that they're in, of a friendship of that sort, where there can be this kind of honest sharing and talking and love. Whereby the grace of the Lord works on the heart to inflame that heart and to be responsive to that love. And there's a lot of times in situations like this, there might be an intellectual difficulty, but most often it's kind of a psychological or spiritual one. And and the way that problem kind of gets unpacked is in relationship. So I would say, keep the friendship going. To talk to him, let him simply share the difficulty, the pain of his own heart, with that kind of loving, listening ear, and to be able to respond with the truths that we know. And the great thing about our faith, and especially here in the U.S., there's lots of resources. I mean, Catholic Answers has resources. One of the books that just came to mind were Dr. Peter Kreff's Love is Stronger Than Death. It's a great book on death. And he usually explains things in a very, very coherent and easy to understand manner. But I think that's where I would begin. And above all, to be praying for him. And you might, and I'm a big fan of this because I just see it works. Offer a sacrifice for him. Give something up for the awakening of his faith. It could be something really small, but just that little sacrifice with love that united to our prayer becomes very powerful for the moving of hearts.
Courtney, how's that?
That sounds great. That sounds really good. I feel very inspired to do that. So thank you for giving me that advice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. God bless you.
Yes, and call anytime. I really appreciate it. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Ask a Priest. The priest today is a wonderful priest. Twice served as the master of ceremonies to a pope. One was Pope Benedict. One was Pope. I don't have to say the number, do I? Because everyone knows it wasn't like the 15th or the 14th. He'd be 100 years old, 200 years old. All right, Pope Benedict and Pope Francis. And he is now the pastor of Christ the King Parish in Milwaukee, Oregon. And if you have a question for him, 888-318-7884.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
Well, I don't think we're like the typical college students because we really hang out at our campus ministry and everything. It's amazing about how much more connected you feel. We share really cool articles from actually you guys, EWTN, and like what you were saying about evangelization. So that's really nice.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Ask a Priest this hour on Catholic Answers Live, 888-318-7884. If you have a question for a priest, you're welcome to call, 888-318-7884. Before I go to the next caller, I have to make a confession. It's not a sacramental confession. I'm just going to make a confession. I want to see what you think about this as a Catholic pastor of a Catholic parish.
Okay.
Several times during the COVID, we couldn't go to Mass here. And I forgot to log on and give the weekly support to the parish. And I'm actually a little bit in arrears right now. I'm just realizing this as we're talking. And so I feel like there's probably other people out there. Like, have you experienced that as a pastor? Like, are people, do you need people to log on and make their usual donation?
Absolutely,
because
yeah.
You're still got to keep the lights on.
Yeah. I have a parish in school, and we're still, rolling. And I think that a lot of, I'm sure all pastors that would agree with me is that, yeah, we still need those contributions because that's what that's what makes the parish happen. But I think for a lot of people, it's learning how to do the online giving, and getting set up there. And I know there's people who are like, "Gosh, I have no idea. I don't know how to do it." But what we do at our Christ the King is like, "Listen, we'll come over to your house. We'll talk you through it on the phone. We'll we stop you after Mass, show us your device. We'll help you. We'll get one of our social media team on it. And so, so I think that's key, because for a lot of people who are used to envelope giving, they go, if they don't go to church physically, then it doesn't come in. Although people have been mailing them in.
Oh, that's good.
You can always mail those in. But yeah, so a pastor's never disappointed to get a contribution from his parishioners.
Yeah, I thought while you're on, I might mention it because I actually have forgotten, and I'll go a few weeks and realize, oh man, I haven't given them anything. Nick, have you been good about it? Have you been good about giving to your to your parish?
For the most weekends.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's better than me. All right, we're going to go back to calls. Michael in Arlington, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. You are next. Michael, your question for Monsignor John Syak.
Well, my question is that I just recently came back 2 weeks ago back to the church, and my fiance and I've separated myself from her from being in the same room. My question is that I want to raise my kids Catholic, and I also introduced her to the RCIA, and she kind of like, I don't know about that. I prefer the boys to make up their own decision about baptism, and I told them I explained how important it is to be baptized now. I'm just lost at what I need to do next.
Okay.
Good. That's a good question. First of all, congratulations on coming back to the church. That's wonderful. And my first, I guess my first bit of counsel would be, to keep going, keep deepening your faith and your return, in your own personal sacramental life of going to Mass, going to confession, informing yourself of the faith, especially because sometimes when we're away from the faith, we often miss out on certain of knowing a lot of our faith. So to keep learning that, I guess with regard to your fiance would be to think about, when you're raising kids is like, do we let the kids go to bed anytime they want? Do we let them to choose that? No, obviously not, because they won't grow up right. They'll be, they won't have those disciplined habits. Or, do we, I don't want to force piano on my kids because I want them to decide when they're older if they want to play the piano or not. Well, what will happen is they just won't know how to play the piano. So, or if kids are like, would you just let them eat whatever they want? No. So all these things that we do as parents to raise children is really to teach them a way of living, and it's no different from the faith. And so what we want to do is we want to provide them with the faith. Now, when they grow up, they're going to decide what they're going to do anyway. But if you give them the faith, at least they'll have something to believe in. They'll have the habit of believing, because those who grow up with no faith, they will struggle for that. They don't really know how to believe because no one's ever taught them. And so I think that might be just a good just conversation starter in terms of as you're talking through these things, about how kids would be raised. It's like, yeah. So if I'm gonna really take an interest in deciding what they eat and don't eat, how much more would we take an interest in their relationship with God? So I think there's just two bits of advice I'd offer on that question.
What do you think, Michael?
That'll work. It's just, like I said, I'm just struggling and trying to help my fiance understand the Catholic faith, and she's been years and years a non-denominational, and
well, that's going to be a struggle. I mean, that's just a basic of marriage when you're at odds about something as fundamental. And I say this as a person who, in my own marriage, we struggled for years and years because we were different. We were so religiously different, and you can get through it. There's all kinds of hope, but it is a struggle. And that's one of the reasons why we say to young people, you try to marry someone with whom you share those most basic things. But I wouldn't go back and redo it. I'm happy with the wife that I got and the marriage that I got and the life I got, but it is harder. It's definitely harder. So I don't know, Monsignor?
And I think just the last piece, and this is just a good thing in our relationships, is patient love. That's from Teresa of Avila. Yeah. Patient love attains all things. So that kind of patient love and learning the kind of the give and take and the conversation and whatnot, and your own personal witness of what Christ is doing in your own heart as a Catholic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. I'm going to keep going because there are other folks who have a priest question, but you're welcome to call back anytime. Marcella in Kansas, listening on Sword of St. George Radio. Holy smoke, that's the best radio name ever. All right, Marcella, your question.
Hi, Monsignor John and Cy. I do have a quick question about the consecration of the host. When the priest holds up the host, that one host becomes the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. When do all the other hosts become consecrated? I mean,
yeah,
is it
so
like automatic?
It's the short answer is that all the hosts are consecrated that are there on the corporal there. So the priest's intention for those hosts that are on the altar there, that's when the consecration happens for all of them at the same time. It's just that the rubric indicates that the priest holds the principal host in his hands as he does that. But it's the words of institution, the epiclesis and the words of institution over the whole, all the hosts where they're consecrated.
The tabernacle have already been consecrated then as well.
The host in the tabernacle?
Correct. The host in the tabernacle should already be consecrated, which is why we have the sanctuary lamp there indicating the real presence. And so those hosts often in Mass will be brought over to join the other hosts that had just been consecrated for distribution to the faithful.
Marcella, I'm going to say thanks because I got some more I'd like to get in with Monsignor if I can. Ryan in New Braunfels, Texas, listening or watching on YouTube Live. Ryan, you're going to have to be quick with your question.
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Sure, yep.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming on. Quick question. So I was talking to my Protestant father. We're coming into the church, and he's very much against it. And we were talking about kind of walking through, needing the church's authority to weigh in on spiritual and doctrinal issues that we can't decide for ourselves as individuals. We need to look to the church's authority. And his response was, well, aren't you relying on your own individual authority and knowing that the Catholic Church is the true church? So just curious what a good response would be to that.
Yeah, I think it's what I would always go back to is the sense of of the apostles, the apostolic line. So we're basically come down to this choice: either there is a teaching magisterium of the church, or every single person is their own magisterium. Now, just because the church has her magisterium doesn't mean I abrogate my conscience, but that I form my conscience according to the mind and the heart of the church, and what she teaches that comes to us from the apostles, so that I begin to think, as the old Latin phrase goes, sentire cum ecclesia, that I sense with the church. And I think that would be the response I have. It's not an either or. It's either the church's magisterium or me. It's allowing my own conscience to be informed by the church, whereby I live out my life.
Ryan, does that help you?
Yes, sir. Very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. Thank you very much for the call. Our guest is this hour is Monsignor John Syak. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and I don't know what else to say about that. Portland, Oregon is a wonderful place.
We're having our challenges. Yes.
Well,
please pray for us.
We can never tell. Well, we see things on the news. You can never tell. It's like the fires in California. Sometimes, the fires are out in the hills, but they report it like the entire California is burning down. So you never know, but it hasn't been pleasant there in Portland, I take it. No,
it hasn't come down to I'm in the southern suburbs, so it really hasn't touched us so much, but you certainly hear about it all the time. And downtown it's not a pretty sight right now.
Well, thanks for taking the time to do this hour with us. May we have your blessing before you go?
Absolutely. May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit descend upon you all and remain with you forever. Amen.
Amen. Monsignor John Syak, I hope we'll just keep doing this. I love it when you're on. You're a great guest. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you, Cy. It's great to be on the show. Please give my best to everybody there.
I will indeed. We can't pay anymore, though. It's going to stay exactly as low as it is now. Forever. We could double it, and it would still be exactly as low as it is now. Thanks, Monsignor. Hey,
God bless you.
You too. Thank you. Dr. Stacy Trasanko's coming up. I don't know. She's set a high bar for herself. It's not just that science gives us a greater reason to believe in God, but she says science leads to Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus, but you believe in science, if you believe in Jesus, but you don't believe in science, or if you believe in both, anybody can call. She loves talking with you. 888-318-7884. Right back after this. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. The number is 888-318-7884. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and we'd love it if you call if you've got a question about, science and religion, so often portrayed as the enemies of one another, but our guest today, and by the way, Darren messed up. Darren does not mess up very often, but I'm going to say it right. I don't know why it has taken so long for him to get Dr. Stacey Trasancos back on. It feels like it's been... What is your problem, Darren? What happened? Dr. Stacey Trasancos, our guest, and one of our favorite guests, certainly one of the more well-received of our guests, and I think in part because of the fine work she does, but also because the topic is so fraught these days, science and religion. She's an internationally recognized author and speaker on the topic of theology and science. She's the executive director for the St. Philip Institute of Catechesis and Evangelization in the Diocese of Tyler, Texas. Where the bishop there has a new book coming out. Whenever I introduce her at a conference, I always say, Dr. Stacey Trasancos, scientist and theologian, and that is no exaggeration. She's a PhD chemist with a master's in dogmatic theology, and there's a million more things I could say about her, but welcome, Dr. Stacey.
Oh, thank you so much. I love being on this show with you.
Do you? Because it's been so long.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Time just goes. It's because of the virus.
Oh, it might be. Yeah, it might be. Yeah, Darren's saying yes. I think I really hurt Darren's feelings. Darren, you didn't mess up. You're okay. He's all sad in there. All right, so I think you have chosen a hard topic for yourself because science. I do believe that it's fairly easy when you look at things like the fine-tuning of the universe to say there is great circumstantial evidence for God in the universe. But you're saying more than that. You're saying science directs us towards Jesus.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something I've really worked a long time to hone that message because I think it's so important in our day and age. But think about it. It's so simple. Science, what is science? It's study of nature. We're studying nature when we do physics, chemistry, or biology. And nature is God's creation. So that's one thing I always say, science is the study of the handiwork of God. But when you can get there. I mean, science points beyond itself anyway, because if science was human, if what happens out there in the leaves, photosynthesis, or what happens on the periodic table, or what happens with all this crazy order in physics, if that were human, then we would know everything about science. But we don't. Scientists do not know everything. They know there's so much more they don't know than what they do know. And that just begs the question, who created this? I mean, because we don't know everything in science, because science is inhumanly ordered, because there's more order and beauty and symmetry in science than anything any human could have come up with, science points beyond itself. So it's not hard to get to God, but I really push that message of why science points to Jesus Christ. And you have to go back into, and I have my first book, Science Was Born of Christianity, based on Father Stanley Yockey's teaching, who was a physicist and a theologian. But you get into, why do we define God the way we do in Christianity? Because of the revelation of Jesus Christ with the incarnation and the revelation, like you were talking about last hour, of the Holy Trinity. And I could say a whole lot on it, but I'll try to keep it short. A lot of people have heard in Aristotelian philosophy about the first cause or the unmoved mover. I mean, Trent Horn and Carlo Broussard can tell you all about that. But the ancient Greeks knew there was this unnamed God. They knew, and they were very advanced in science in their day. They knew there was some God, something, some one God, not a bunch of gods, because that's just really like superheroes, but there was this one God, this monotheism. And the way the Greeks thought of it was that this one God, this unmoved mover, this first cause, emanated from the universe. And so emanate means to flow from. So they pictured God as flowing from the universe. They pictured the universe and God on the same level. And that's why they had the great year, this concept of the great year, the eternally cycling cosmos. What did we learn from the Old Testament and when Christ came? That there is an absolute beginning in time, and that God creates out of nothing. The act of creation out of nothing versus creation, which is change. And the ancient Greeks had this idea of this eternally cycling cosmos, but with Christ, we had to stick to the absolute beginning in time, because if there's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, and they are one, then that means in the beginning when God created, Christ also created. The Holy Spirit created. And there is your thinking and your loving and your willing and the logos, the order. So we could only have a universe this ordered. That's only befitting the second person of the Holy Trinity as it was revealed to us. So there's order in the universe, there's order in creation, and creation doesn't flow from God. It's created by God. It's the handiwork of God. So all of those things fit together to guard against this view of the universe that the universe is itself God, like the pantheist thought, and like every other religion has ever conceived of God, being animistic or being the universe itself, or even in the Chinese religion where you're trying to become one with the universe. Christianity is radically different from any other religion. Even St. John in his gospel, when he named the unnamed God as Christ, when he called Christ the only begotten, he was challenging the ancient Greeks on their word unigenitas or monogenes. That is their word for only begotten, and they used it to describe the universe as flowing out of God. He said, the universe is not God, Jesus Christ is God. And that solidified the difference between pantheism and creation. And that's everything. And that fits with what we know about science today. When you get to the periodic table, or you get to any of the equations that you learn in physics at whatever level of physics, whether it's particle physics or just the beginning linear motion equations, there is order throughout science. So if you're a really questioning person and you really want to follow the logic all the way from the beginning to the very end, you love science, you realize there's a God, you realize there could only be God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, as revealed by the incarnation of Jesus Christ. And
wow. Well, okay, wrap it up. Let's all go home. She did it. Wow. So just the fact that, like, I talked about the fine tuning of the universe, but you talked about the periodic table. But these things are imbued with reasonableness, and with that they can only be produced by a reasoning, and that's what we call the second person of the Trinity, is Logos, and through him all things were made. So you're saying the universe itself is evidence of the Logos? Yes.
I mean, I don't know how. I mean, it took me a while to get my head around this, but sometimes I say that we need to be evangelizing through science, and that's what I mean. I mean, I'm living down here. When I first started talking to y'all, I was living up in New York in the Adirondack Mountains, and since then I've decided, my husband and I moved the kids back home to Texas, where I was born and raised. And then, long story short, I ended up working for Bishop Strickland, who is amazing in his ability to just speak the simple truth. And we live here in East Texas among the Bible Belt. We're in like the belt buckle of the Bible Belt down here. And everybody loves Jesus, which is amazing. It's so great to live in Texas after living in New York for 5 years. But everybody loves Jesus. And I've really been thinking about the message, how we talk about Jesus more instead of because that is relatable for evangelists. So also, given science, everybody wants to talk about science. So if you can sit someone down and explain to them what I just did about how science points to Jesus, how we, that I think resonates with people. I mean, we live in a scientific age. You cannot think of any decision you make in your life, including this show that we're doing right now, that isn't affected by the advances in science that have come about in the last 100 years with our knowledge of the atom. So we live in a scientific age. We can evangelize through science by showing people that only the Christian God, as was revealed as the truth, could have made out of love the universe that we live in, that gives us the science that everybody depends on today. It all fits together.
It does, and sometimes it does. And I'll ask you more when we come back, because I got to do this break. But the fact that it all fits together, and the deeper that you go into it, the more it fits together with the person of Christ, the greater confidence you have than in the Gospels, in the teachings of Christ, in His divinity, because no matter what reaches you go to, whether on the macro or the micro in science, you're never going to find anything that has one word of contradiction to the divinity of Christ, and many, many things that point to it.
Yep, exactly.
We'll take a quick break.
It's beautiful.
We'll be right back. It is beautiful. God made it so beautiful. We'll be right back with Dr. Stacy Trasenko, scientist and theologian. She's the author of the famous book, Particles of Faith. She's also the author of Science Was Born of Christianity. And for us here at Catholic Answers, she wrote the 20 Answers book, Bioethics. Your calls are welcome at 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live. We're here for you.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
When I begin my prayer time, I always enter into it with the expectation that God wants to teach me something. And it has to start with my willingness to share my heart with God, not just say words at Him. So whether I'm using more formal prayers or a more conversational style of prayer, I have to bring my heart and my life and my real self to God. And by having that dialogue, we're able to enter into a deeper relationship, and He's able to show me how to use all the events of my life to draw closer to Him.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Sometimes it's very good to have a chance to talk to somebody who has a PhD in stuff you have no understanding of, and that's Dr. Stacy Trasenko. This is a PhD in chemistry and a master's in theology, and so we affectionately call her around here Dr. Stacy Trasenko, scientist and theologian. Have I ever introduced you without saying that? I don't think I have.
I don't think so, ever, no.
Because it's like you're like a superhero. We got a ton of calls. Shall we go to calls? Or was there anything else we wanted to do before we went to calls?
Yes, but no calls about whether contraception is right or wrong. It's wrong, and no questions about whether evolution is true or false. It might be true. So
okay.
There.
Well, all right. You got your limits there, Marie. Now you know. Let's go to Michael in Florida, listening on Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Channel 130. That's EWTN on Channel 130 on Sirius Satellite Radio. Michael, your question for Dr. Stacy Trasenko.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to know, like, in this present day and age, like, where does science and technology meet and separate from our faith?
Okay. All right. So you wanted to include science and technology in there, Michael. Mm-hmm. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So where do they meet our faith, and where do they separate is what he's asking.
Okay, there's a lot of ways I think that question could be answered. So I hope I answer it the way you're asking. Where do science and technology meet with our faith? Something I've also gotten very comfortable saying, because I've been pressed on this question a lot of times: what comes first, faith or science, or faith or reason? I say faith, because you have to have the correct worldview to reason correctly. So you have to look through your lens of faith to understand the universe that we're in. And that's exactly how science was born, because the scholars were looking at the universe as the handiwork of God and expected it to be so ordered. So move that up to today, 2020. How does science and technology meet faith? We need to be it's actually a really good question, Michael. We need to be thinking about the progress of mankind, of humanity, through the lens of faith. So especially like in bioethics, but also in technology for making cell phones, for communication, anything, it needs to be guided by virtue. So with the virtues, we have faith, hope, and love, the theological and the cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. All that plays into making good decisions. And we need people out there in technology and science who understand that it's not enough to say, I can do something. Just because you can take the remains of aborted children and use them in the production of a COVID-19 vaccine doesn't mean you should. Just because you can make cell phones, or I don't know, I can't think of any other examples, but just because you can do it in science doesn't mean you should. And what we need in the coming years, and so what we need right now, but especially what we're going to need in the future, are people who understand God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, that we're human persons made in the image and likeness of God with an intellect and will, with a human soul, and that we can make choices about where we take humanity. So that's where they meet. We have to look at science and technology through our lens of faith.
Michael, how's that?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the call.
Thank you, Michael.
Let's go to John right here in Huntington Beach, California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. John, your question for Dr. Stacy Trasenko, scientist and theologian.
Oh, hi, Dr. Trasenko. I was going to talk a little bit about science as the study of the handiwork of God, which you kind of often quote, and how that kind of relates to science in the Bible and science in the Catholic faith. But then you kind of, in your opening monologue, sort of answered that question for me for the first time that I've heard in your talk about Jesus. I'm a pushback guy. I'm a rebuttal guy. I totally accept that science is in fact the study of the handiwork of God, but I also would charge that the Bible itself is a blasphemy to the handiwork of God. And if I wanted to be kind of mean-spirited, which I sort of do, I might say if Jesus is truly the second person in the Godhead, that would make him responsible for drowning his own children. But I feel that the Bible, it's just filled with sorcery and superstition and a level of scientific ignorance that becomes overwhelming, by the time you get to the book of Numbers. And so I'm really wondering how scientifically, now I understand that you could have theology arguments in favor of the Bible and maybe even some historical arguments in favor of the Bible, but how do you compensate for what I would call just overwhelming scientific ignorance in the Bible?
Okay. Well, I would compensate that by saying they didn't have this book. Can you see this? They didn't have
That's a chemistry book.
They didn't have a chemistry textbook back in the days when the Bible was being written by the human authors. And they were communicating to the people of their time. So I wouldn't expect the Bible to be a science textbook. I would expect the Bible to be communicating a true message, but the science part of it, I wouldn't expect to have any explanation of ferromagnetism, for example, in the Bible. Although ferromagnetism was definitely working in those days, the people writing about it didn't have that knowledge. Does that make sense? And I think you're asking about suffering too.
John?
Well, I wasn't going to really bring suffering into it. That's a different conversation. But I would say that if God is, revealing himself to humanity, why is he revealing himself to a very small population of people in the first century when we have, hundreds of thousands of times more people now that have a real understanding of this? And it does appear to me that people are walking away from Christianity. It doesn't match up. What does it got to do with us today, what God wanted to tell the ancient Israelites? And I really think when you read these books, you realize that the creator of the universe had nothing to do with the writings of these books.
I don't know. I read them. I don't feel that way. I mean, you'd have to be more specific about what bothers you in them. But Dr. Stacy, I'll let you make your response.
Yeah, I guess I try to read the Old Testament with empathy, meaning I'm trying to see it through the eyes of the people writing. I mean, the most powerful thing in the Old Testament is the very, very beginning, where it says, "In the beginning, God created," and that that lays the foundation for science to eventually emerge. But there's something you were saying that I just lost hold of. You're talking about why didn't God reveal everything to us? I understand, I think, what you're saying, or I felt something similar. Even with science, why doesn't God reveal more to us? Why doesn't God reveal to us exactly how the baby Jesus came out of the body of Mary? Why doesn't God reveal to us exactly how the world populated from Adam and Eve? And there's so many things God didn't reveal. And I kind of think about it like I'm a mother. I have 7 children, 6 grandchildren. I have 4 teenage daughters in the house right now. And I spend a lot of time answering their questions. But in respecting the dignity of my children and their own path in life and their free will, I don't always reveal everything to them. Like if I told them everything to do just perfect and I did everything for them and I cleaned their bed and tucked their bed, they don't do that. But if I did all that cleaning for them and I planned their life for them and I told them everything to do, I would actually not be respecting the dignity of their individual selves. So I think of it like God gave us the knowledge we needed to get to heaven, but he lets us have the thrill and the journey of figuring the rest out for ourselves. Because you don't need to know science to get to heaven.
All right.
I think you're right when you say that God reveals himself, but God reveals himself through the study of his creation. He does not reveal himself through the writings of ancient books whose authors were barbaric, superstitious, practiced sorcery, and didn't know what they were talking about. They were simply wrong about things. It's
Can
really
you know what, John? Let me just real quick. I mean, you expressed a tremendous certainty about how God would do things. I don't feel that certainty. I feel like God is way smarter than me, and he might think of a better way than I would, even if it looked worse to me. But what you say that they're sorcerers and they don't know anything and they were simply wrong. Could you just give us one example so we have something to deal with? Because otherwise it's just opinions, I think, between us.
Dr. Trasenko just mentioned she had 4 daughters. I would say that the Word of God says that her daughters, when they're experiencing their menstruation cycle, are unclean, that the things that they touch become unclean, and that the formula for them to get clean again is to kill 2 pigeons and burn the carcass of the second pigeon.
Yeah, no, it doesn't say that. It held that one at one time for one people, but it certainly doesn't say that about Dr. Trasenkos' daughters. Or mine, or anybody else's of today.
Yeah, and we read the Bible. We read the old in the light of the new, and the new in the light of the old. So typography, we read the Bible together. And so when you're reading that part of the Old Testament, you know that Christ is going to come in the fullness of time and reveal to us the message, reveal the incarnate. Well, he is the incarnation, and reveal to us the Holy Trinity, and reveal that that we don't have to do those things. People did those things because they were trying like everything to please God. We go to Mass and practice the liturgy as perfectly as we can because we're still trying like everything to repay to God what we owe him for holding us in existence. So when you read those history accounts, that in mankind's search for God, yearning for God, to know God, there are lots of times that we're trying to do things right, but they just aren't right. I mean, if you looking all through history, you can see this is a fallen world, and no human government, no human system ever got it perfectly right, including our own elections right now. It's just, but that's what's in the Old Testament. It's a story. It's a history. I'm
going to leave it there. John, I thank you for your call. And Well, I just thank you for your call. We just got to keep moving because there's so many people that would like to talk to Dr. Trasancos.
Thank you, John.
The number is 888-318-7884. Dr. Stacy Trasancos, our guest. Our topic for the day is that she says science points us towards Jesus. And if you have questions about that, and certainly as you hear with John, if you'd like to challenge that, you are welcome to challenge that. We take the challenges quite seriously. I'll go now to Giovanni in Rhode Island, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Giovanni, your question for Dr. Trasancos.
Hello, Dr. Trasancos. So I hang around a bunch of atheists and agnostic and skeptic friends, right? Do you have any arguments using science to prove the existence of God and the existence of Christianity?
Yeah, okay. So can science prove the existence of God or the
Yes.
existence of Christianity? And she's nodding her head, and she wants so bad to answer it, but I'm not going to let her because there's the music. Can you hang on a second, Giovanni?
Absolutely, man.
All right, hang on a second. Dr. Stacy Trasancos will address that question. The question being, does science give us evidence for God or Christianity? Or I think Giovanni even said, do they prove God or Christianity? We'll be right back with Dr. Trasancos' answer right after this.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his outspoken support of unborn life, Orthodox faith and morals, and reforming Catholic institutions. In his groundbreaking new book, Light and Leaven, he offers a forthright perspective on the state of the church today and calls on the lay faithful to meet its challenges boldly. Touching on topics including parish renewal, the centrality of the Eucharist, the need for prayer and silence in a noisy and distracted age, and the battle between good and evil in the church and world, Bishop Strickland's wise insights and evident love for souls will inspire and edify you. To order your copy of Light and Leaven, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and we're talking science and religion this hour, and science and faith, and we sometimes we go far afield not far afield, but the questions range over the whole range of possibilities when those two things are on the table. When Dr. Trasancos is here, and we understand that and welcome it. Dr. Trasancos is the director of the St. Philip, or should I say, I'm supposed to say executive director, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Executive director of the St. Philip Institute in the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, and the author of Particles of Faith, among other books. And when we left, Giovanni was on the line in Rhode Island asking about friends that are agnostic and atheist, and Giovanni would like to have some kind of evidence or even proof that science can provide for God and for Christianity. Go ahead. You're on. Oh, did you quit? You're not going to answer that?
Me?
Oh, yeah. We had a little audio problem. I'm sorry. I thought, no, she's just not going to answer. She's not. No. So go ahead with you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I I was scrolling on Facebook.
Don't admit that. Don't admit that. You're a scientist at the. Oh, you were seeing what I know. You were on our Facebook feed.
Terrible. I know, Spacey. No, my kids even tell me that's what they remember about childhood, that I let them starve because I was busy on Facebook all the time.
That's horrifying.
Don't feel bad if you do it too, moms. No, but you're asking about atheists and how to use science to prove to them that God exists. You can't do it. I recommend that nobody ever try to use science to prove that God exists, because you're going to get yourself in a trap if you try to do that. I mean, you can do this all day long. You can go, boy, look at those trees out there. Let me tell you about photosynthesis. That sure points to God. But the minute you say, oh, wow, look, there's evidence for the Big Bang, that's proof that God exists, you're inverting the right order of things. You're not seeing science through the light of faith. You're seeing faith through the light of science. And science isn't able to do that. I mean, science gives you like inductive evidence of God. It gives you proof that can add up and point beyond itself. But science is never going to deductively, absolutely prove there is a God. Science just keeps asking the next question, the next question. So an atheist who knows something about science is going to know that. And if you try to use science to prove to them that God exists, they're going to think that you must not have very strong faith, that you need science to prove what you ought to be holding in faith. And so you really set yourself up there to lose that person. What I recommend doing instead is ask them things like, who do you think created all this order? If you ask them, who do you think created your cell phone that you can scroll Facebook on, they'll say somebody created that. But if you say, who created the 72 different elements that go into making a cell phone, they're going to be going, they won't know. It'll get them thinking, and they're probably not going to go, aha, I'm going to be Catholic now. They'll have to keep thinking. But what you want to do with atheists is you want to keep the conversation going. You don't want to, the conversion's going to happen in the wee hours of the night when they're looking out at the stars, thinking things over. And you want to help them ask the questions about, is there a creator that created all of this? Probably, logically. But the real hard thing, at least for me, because I converted from chemistry to Catholicism, the real hard thing is accepting that this God who knows how many electrons are on all the atoms on the end of your nose also knows all your sins and all your failures and your shortcomings, and knows every thought you've ever had and still loves you. So you want to help that atheist in front of you move beyond the intellectual arguments, be ready to give them, but give them in a way that says, hey, I'm your friend. I see you through the eyes of God, and we're all in this together. And let me be here when you have questions, but also let me look at the world through your eyes and see things the way you see them. So empathy with the atheist. It's kind of hard sometimes.
Giovanni, what do you think?
Yeah, that was a good answer. Thank you.
That was good. I don't know. I think you gave it like a B+. Maybe just a B. I don't know. That didn't sound very that was a good. All right. Okay. 888-318-7884. Our guest is Dr. Stacy Trasenko. Next time, look, I don't like to encourage lying, but maybe just say I was doing a science experiment or something. I was involved in a photosynthesis experiment, because that's what you did when you were a chemist, right? You tried to understand photosynthesis.
Yeah, I failed.
Well, everybody else has too. It's not like you're the only one. Why you sound so bummed about it. All right, let's go to Claudia in Colorado, listening on 1060 AM. Claudia, your question for Dr. Trasenkos.
Yes, and I hope that I don't mind that I'm going to include a second very short question, but the first one is how to respond to the argument for when the neuroscientists say that our brain is built to chemically believe that I don't know how to explain that there is a higher entity that is more like a chemical than really, And the second one is that I was reading that Darwin said that how come God, who is so merciful, created such a dangerous wasp species. There are like thousands of those. and how come he would have created something like that?
Like wasps?
Wasp.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha. Okay. So, the first question then, though, because you do hear this, there are neuroscientists will say, look, your brain is tricking you. The chemicals in your brain are tricking you into believing in God. This is just all part of your evolution, and it's part of an adaptation that makes you survive more. There's a lot of stuff. They'll take various modes, but I think Claudia's point is well taken. How do you respond to someone who says, look, you just believe in God because essentially evolution and its effects in your brain make you believe in a higher something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, I held up my chemistry book a while ago. If everything in this chemistry book is true and that explains fundamentally what holds our bodies together, then all the atoms that make up all the neurons in your brain, they're just following the laws of nature the way they should. And if you, Claudia, picked your hand up right now and waved at me, waved back, if you did that line of thinking would have you believe that you were literally born to do that. Like whenever the universe started, all these motions were set into place based on cause and effect of different things happening. And I like to say, if you got up right now, if Cy got up right now and walked out of the studio and went to get a taco, we could say that he was literally born to go get that taco right now.
I think I was.
Because you didn't have a choice.
Yeah, right.
You're just doing what the atoms and molecules do.
Yeah.
So there's something different there. And this is where Catholic teaching also comes into play. And it changed my life because I thought what you just said, Claudia, I thought that the human person was just a collection of atoms and molecules doing their thing. When I had children, I thought that. And it really messes up the way you try to love your child and raise your child when you just think of them as an object because you don't know how to think of it any differently. And that was one of the reasons I converted. I knew there was more than science because I loved my children. And so the way you get around that with atheists or anybody who talks about there is no free will, you have to say, well, there is no free will in physics. Atoms don't have free will. That's true. God created the universe with these laws and order. But God also created us in his image and likeness. And we have body and soul. We are body and soul. And our soul is, in being created like God, we have intellect and we have free will, which was something the Holy Trinity revealed to us about who we are. We can think and reason and love. And we want to know things and we want to be known and we want to love and be loved and we want to belong in a community. And so that's why we long for all these things that we long for. So the answer to someone like that is just you have to let go of finding all the answers in the physical world. You have to accept there's a supernatural component to reality as well. And that's where you find free will. You'll never find an explanation for free will in a physics book.
So why did God make wasps?
God made wasps because everything in this universe has a purpose and a reason. We just don't know what it is yet. and I mean, my kids ask me that. Why did God make those blood-sucking mosquitoes? Like, why did they even have to be in the world? And I turned that into a lesson about, why do you get fever? Why do we suffer? Why do we sometimes, why do we get sick and die? Because in the bigger scheme of thing where God, everything came from God and everything that God created is being drawn back to him at the end of time. In that bigger picture, God understands the reason, but he doesn't. We may not understand the reason in the moment in which we live. And right now, wasps exist. And I honestly don't know why, but I can accept that that's because I don't know everything, not because God messed up.
Claudia, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that question. Dr. Stacy Trasancos is our guest. She's a chemist and she's a theologian. And if you have a faith and science question, she's the person to go to. Today, our topic is that science leads to Jesus. That if you follow science to its and understand science, then you end up with the second person of the Trinity. The number again, 888-318-7884. Before we go to break, St. Philip Institute that Dr. Trasancos directs is partnering with Catholic Answers to bring an 8-week seminar, Carlo Broussard 8-week seminar on meeting the Protestant challenge. How'd you get Carlo to do this?
I wish I could just bring Carlo here.
I know.
Take apart all his body atoms and molecules and reformulate them here. But he just, I know Carlo. I went to Australia with all you guys, and that's why I can say internationally known.
Is that why? I'm internationally known too then. I got to start saying that.
Yeah. But I just really, I have a tremendous respect for Carlo's body of knowledge, like all the things that he knows, and he explains it so well. And I know he spends a great deal of time thinking how to explain it. And when he said that he could do this 8-week course about meeting the Protestant challenge, we're right here in the Bible Belt, like I said. And so there's a lot of questions that he's already thought long and hard about and answered that will be of interest to people here. But this seminar, this is for anybody, anywhere, because all you need to get together now is a Zoom connection. So we're hoping people will join Carlo in this. You can join the 8-week seminar for $39.95, and you can actually join the webinar and live discussion where we'll make sure you get to ask Carlo questions during the class. We have a limited number of those because we want to make sure the people that do that actually get to ask questions. But check out our website and register for it. This is going to be a fascinating 8 weeks. It's better than watching Netflix.
The website is stphilipinstitute.org, and you just go to events. You can just put /events in, or just find the little button there on their website, stphilipinstitute.org/events. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more with Dr. Stacy Trasenkos, scientist and theologian, on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
A very wonderful woman I knew had 4 children, and all 4 died. And somebody went up to her one day and they said, "Oh, what a pity." And she said, "Oh no, what a blessing." If we don't begin to look at everything with the eyes of Jesus, you will become helpless and hopeless.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Stacy, get off Facebook. We're back on. All right. Just in case you needed that. You're back to the Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Dr. Stacy Trasenkos. She's a scientist. She's a theologian. She's the mother of 7, and you can't get her off Facebook. That is a new thing that I have learned about her. You can't get her off Facebook.
I love Facebook.
You know what my children would say about that, because they're horrible people? Yeah, all the old people love Facebook.
That's what my kids say. Yes. Yes.
Somebody wants to know how to buy your book, and it could be Particles of Faith, the #1 bestseller. I don't know I'm just making that up. I have no idea. The other one is Science. Wait, tell me how the second one. Science was born of. No.
Of Christianity.
Science was born of Christianity.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on the.
Science was born of Christianity.
And then the third one is 20 Answers Bioethics. You can get all of those, I think, at our shop.catholic.com. I'm not sure, but I think you can get them all there.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
Assistant producer Marie tells me that she will link it to the website for this show. So if you go to this show and go down to the materials at the bottom, then there'll just be a link there for where you can buy Dr. Trasenko's book. We're going now to San Antonio, Texas, EWTN Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio, where Eleazar.
Texas.
Am I saying this correctly? Eleazar is on the line. Maybe I should just say Ellie. You there with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Eleazar?
Yeah, it's Eleazar. It's a Hebrew name. Son of God.
I know that. I was trying to give it a Spanish pronunciation for some reason, and I just messed it all up. I apologize for that.
That's all good.
But
it's all good.
To me, we're friends now, so you're always going to be Ellie from now on. Ellie, your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, your question.
So my question is, I'm a millennial. I'm 28 years old, and I'm Catholic. I grew up Catholic. A lot of my friends, because of my age group, are agnostic or atheist, and they always question my faith. And it doesn't bother me. I like getting into talks, but sometimes they do ask me some difficult questions that I know the answers to, but it's hard to like explain it in short terms, I guess. Like they'll say, well, if God is real, then why does X, Y, Z happen on Earth?
Yeah.
Or why does this happen? Something just terrible, right? So I find it hard to answer the questions, and they'll try to like explain like quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I mean, I'm talking about like metalheads and things like that. So with me, I like to think of it more as like take the route of talking about love, patience, and faith and humility. But to them, it's just like none of that matters because this world is just terrible.
No.
So help me out, please.
Well, I think you're doing most of what you need to do already, and because I'm very big on maintaining the friendship. I mean, the human connection is so important. If it were just a matter of, and I know you're not asking this, but a lot of times we do, and this is rampant in our society because of materialism and scientism, but a lot of times we think the solutions to the problems are just find a list of boxes to check. And before I was Catholic, when I just thought of everything as science, as atoms and molecules doing their things, I was a control freak because I just figured if I checked all these boxes, my kids would just be perfect, like raise a toddler that way. It doesn't work. But that thinking is so rampant in our society that what these people who are talking to you, I suspect, really need is just the relationship. They know you're a safe person. They can ask the biggest questions in life too. They can pose these questions to you. They can have the discussion with you. And I would do if it gets to be too heated at some point, I would say, hey, let's talk about something else. And ask them, what does the world look like through your eyes? Like, do you ever wonder what's the meaning of your life? Do you ever wonder what's going to happen to you that minute that you die? Where do you go? And be a safe place for them to explore these questions with. And then someday they're going to want to know they're going to want to sit still long enough to listen to the arguments for the existence of God, and you'll be ready with your Summa Theologia and your catechism, and you'll be ready to give them. But if you don't have that friendship first, you really never get to the next point. I mean, you can put all the fancy arguments you want and the finest crystal you can find, but you can't force someone to drink them down. That person's not going to drink down those arguments unless he trusts you that you're giving him the truth. So I think you're doing it already.
Elazar, I'm going to leave it there because there's several people that would still like to talk with Dr. Strasankos. I'm going to try to get them all on, but thank you for the call. And if you call again, I will pronounce your name correctly. I'm going to work on it. Let's go to Cindy in Newark, Ohio. It's weird when you have a day when two people call from Newark and neither of them is in New Jersey. Cindy in Newark, Ohio, listening to EWTN on Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Channel 130. You are next, Cindy. Your question for Dr. Strasankos.
Well, hello, and thanks for taking my call. I wanted to just make a comment. I believe it was Claudia that called a few callers back, and she was asking about wasps. And I wanted to make a comment that I'm an avid gardener, and when I'm in my garden, I just find God so abundantly.
Yes.
And this year, I have noticed that I had no Japanese beetles eating the leaves off of my beans and other garden vegetables. And I noticed a very unusual wasp that several of them were on the blossoms of my mint plants. And so they have blue iridescent wings, and I even said, these are beautiful wasps, but I wonder why they're here. And we looked it up on the internet. They eat Japanese beetles.
So they protected your crops.
They totally protected my garden this year. And I just wanted to tell you how God works in mysterious ways, and it's just it was so exciting for my daughter and I to find out.
Yeah, Cindy, thanks. What do you think about that, Dr. Trasancos?
That's great. I mean, that is a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
And it'll help Claudia as well. Yeah. That's how cool. Yeah, Cindy, thanks very much. I don't know about the beans, though. I mean, could you grow sauerkraut? That's my favorite vegetable is sauerkraut. Chuck in Lubbock, Texas is next, listening on 102.9 FM, Our Lady of Victory Radio. Chuck in Lubbock, your question for Dr. Trasancos.
Yes, good afternoon. Dr. Trasenko, in regards to artificial intelligence and the supposedly approaching singularity, number one, can you explain to us what exactly singularity is? And then do you think that God will allow us to reach that point?
Well, she can't explain the singularity because Skynet will not allow us to. We're not.
I'm looking for my book. I have the book.
Oh, you have the guy from the Google guy?
I have the book. Yeah, the Google guy's book. It's silver, and it predicted the singularity in 2020.
Oh, and instead we got COVID. That was a terrible prediction.
But and so for anyone that doesn't know, the singularity is that point in time when artificial intelligence or computers become smarter than humans, like when our smartphones actually exceed our own intelligence. And, it seems like they do sometimes. But I don't think we will ever reach that singularity because we make the computers. I know that's kind of like a lame, simple answer, but it's the truth. We have to make those codes. We write those codes. My husband, Jose, he has a PhD in applied mathematics, and he wrote code for the auto insurance industry and was an executive for a couple of decades. So, we talk about this. The amount of code that you would have to write just to describe, like whether I would want the Hydrox cookie or the Oreo brand cookie, just the amount of questions and code that have to go into all the possible reasons why he might predict one or the other. Even with computer technology like it is today, you would need to fill a building full of computers powerful enough to process all of that. So I think the people that say there's something like a singularity, I don't think they fully appreciate what the human brain is capable of. And I definitely think they could benefit from understanding the theology of the Holy Trinity a little better too.
Well, but the more likely scary thing is that people make just enough AI so that it can, so that it gets out of control and hurts us. Like put it in charge of a couple nuclear weapons and it does something you didn't think you programmed it to do, but you did. That seems to me that is an actual danger, but that's not the danger of the singularity. That's a danger of making machines that we ourselves don't understand how those machines work.
Yeah, it's no different than when you leave the gas on and your house blows up. You did something wrong.
Will you stop blaming me for that? Stop blaming me for the time I blew up the house. Chuck, what do you think of that answer?
Well, I think that's reassuring, and I appreciate her response. However, there's so many people that think that there'd be a point in time where computers will just learn to program their own code.
But there is a thing, and I think you were alluding to it when you mentioned the Blessed Trinity, is this the idea that there are so many things that we do that are the consequence of our immortal, rational soul. For example, abstracting, like your husband is a mathematician. Well, a machine can mimic a mathematician by doing equations, but it can't have any abstract ideas about mathematics. It never can. Not like someday it will. It never can, because that's what the soul does. That's not what the machinery of the brain does.
Yeah, and this is why I think people need to be talking about it more, because there is not a great deal of understanding about the human soul. I mean, there's so much at that intersection of science and theology that could be worked out. Like how does the soul tell the brain what to do, and how does the brain make up its mind? And there's a rich theology that could be done there. So I think the conversations are good. I just don't think we're going to find the answers in physics.
No, Carlos, can I recommend a book to you? Maybe read Walker Percy's book, Lost in the Cosmos. He's a physician, scientist, and a great Catholic thinker as well. Maybe try Lost in the Cosmos, see if that helps you a bit. You have that book too?
You gave it to me.
Oh, I did. Oh, yeah. I didn't do that on purpose. I forgot that I did. Dr. Stacy Trasancos, will you please come back sooner? It's so great when you're on. Thank you very much for being on with us.
Thank you for having me on.
And
thanks to all the callers.
Yep, and thank you all. And best of luck on the work with Carlo Broussard. If you want to take Carlo's class at the St. Philip Institute, go to stphilipinstitute.org and find events, and you will find it there. See you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.